How serious does a crisis in a Formula One team have to be for two teammates from the same team to consider quitting at the same time? Ferrari, the most legendary team in motorsports, is on the verge of internal collapse. And what happened in Singapore 2025 could be the trigger for its biggest implosion in decades. Stay, because what I'm going to tell you could change F1 as we know it. The 2025 Singapore Grand Prix was not just another race on the calendar. It was a decisive event that exposed the deepest structural flaws of the Ferrari team, not only on a technical level, but also on an organizational and human level. The Marina Bay Circuit, known for its extreme thermal demands, its narrow layout, and its constant demand for hard braking, put the SF25 to the limit. What happened during that weekend marked a before and after in the season. From the beginning of Friday, the warning signs were there for anyone who knew how to read them. Data from early track simulations showed unusually high brake temperatures, even on short runs. The cooling system, which had already shown inconsistencies in circuits such as Melbourne and Shanghai, directly collapsed under the unique conditions of Singapore. The worst thing was not only the failure, but that Ferrari's technical leadership knew since January that this could happen. The computational fluid dynamics simulations had clearly warned, in urban layouts, the thermal load would exceed the expected safety margins by up to 15%. During the race, what Hamilton and Leclerc experienced was an extreme experience. Both drivers started with a reasonable pace, but barely reaching the first third of the test, the car began to lose performance abruptly. The degradation was anomalous. The brakes did not respond with the expected predictability, and the car's response in slow corners was erratic. Engineers on the wall watched in horror as brake temperatures reached critical levels. The brake calipers exceeded 1,200 degrees, a threshold that can seriously damage carbon discs. Lewis Hamilton was the one who experienced the worst ordeal. In the last 2 laps, he lost more than 44 seconds due to a complete loss of the rear braking system. The car didn't stop. Literally, he came within inches of hitting the wall on 3 occasions. Telemetry data revealed that the SF25 was not simply overheating. It was collapsing from within, as if it had been designed with a structural weakness from day one. The most devastating thing came later. Riccardo Adami, Hamilton's race engineer, privately acknowledged that the car was compromised from its conception. The leaked words were forceful. The SF25 is not overheating, it is collapsing inside. It can't take any more. When the 2025 Singapore Grand Prix ended, Ferrari not only walked away without significant points. He left with an open wound that still festers within Maranello today. The post-race images were the perfect portrait of a team on the verge of collapse, dejected mechanics, engineers in absolute silence, and 2 drivers who refused to look at each other or at the managers. What happened next was not a simple barrage of impulsive statements, but a public catharsis that revealed the true state of the Ferrari project. Charles Leclerc was the first to speak to the press. His face said it all: frustration, fatigue, and a tone of resignation unbecoming of someone who had always defended Ferrari, even in the worst moments. In front of the microphones, he said a phrase that became a headline in all the newspapers in Italy. "Unfortunately, we do not have the race car to fight with those in front. McLaren has always had the same advantage over us since the beginning of the year. Red Bull took a step forward for Monza and is now at the same level as McLaren. Mercedes is at the same level as them. And then there is us." It was a very hard blow, not only because of the message, but because of who said it. Leclerc, the symbol of Ferrari's future, was publicly acknowledging that the team had stopped evolving. His second comment was even more lapidary. "It feels like we are passengers in the car, not drivers. We can't extract anything else." With those words, Leclerc broke Maranello's unwritten code, that of not exposing the team to the world. What until then was considered a technical problem became a cultural problem. Leclerc's speech not only showed frustration, but total distrust towards the technical structure, towards the engineers who had promised solutions and did not deliver on them. A few minutes later, Hamilton appeared before the press. His countenance was that of a man defeated, but not by competition, but by disappointment. His message was different in tone, but equally forceful. "I feel pain for the entire team, from the catering to the guys in the garage. Everyone gives absolutely everything, but the car we have is not at the level of the people who drive it." It was criticism wrapped in empathy, but deeply corrosive. What Hamilton was saying, in other words, is that the human talent within Ferrari is not being harnessed, that the problem is not effort but technical direction. For a driver who had left Mercedes with the promise of leading the revival of the Prancing Horse, this type of statement amounted to an emotional betrayal. Hamilton had always been calculated in his words. The fact that he spoke like this in public showed that he had lost faith in the project. Sources close to the paddock leaked that same night, his race engineer, Riccardo Adami, had a private conversation with him in which Hamilton was blunt. "If there are no structural changes before the end of the year, I will leave. I did not come here to survive races." In Maranello, the words of both drivers fell like a bomb. Frédéric Vasseur, team principal, was summoned to an emergency meeting with Benedetto Vigna, Ferrari CEO, and John Elkann, group president. The internal message was clear. The crisis had to be contained before it became a media fire. However, the fracture was already made. Several engineers from the aerodynamics department pointed the finger directly at the technical chief for having ignored the simulator's warnings. Within the team, there began to be open talk of shared blame, internal leaks, and the possibility of a complete restructuring of the development area. The Italian media was quick to amplify the crisis. The Maranello press, traditionally divided between patriotism and criticism, aligned almost unanimously against the technical management. Hamilton did not come to Ferrari for this, headlined La Gazzetta dello Sport. Corriere dello Sport was even more blunt. Leclerc surrenders, Hamilton threatens, and Ferrari does not react. The covers of those days perfectly summarize the emotional state of the team. Chaos, disappointment, and fear. The immediate is evident. Internally, Ferrari faces pressure from three different fronts. First, the pilots. Hamilton and Leclerc have made it clear, both publicly and privately, that they are not willing to continue racing if the SF25 does not improve significantly and quickly. Their respective environments have begun to consult contractual clauses. In Hamilton's case, his contract includes an exit clause in the event of repeated structural failures that compromise the safety of the car. In Leclerc's case, there is a performance clause linked to the number of podiums achieved in the first half of the championship. Second, the directive. John Elkann and Benedetto Vigna, Ferrari's highest corporate authorities, have been informed by Frédéric Vasseur of the real dimension of the problem. It is not only technical, it is also political. There are clashes within the engineering area, information leaks to the press, and a growing division between the design, aerodynamics, and strategy departments. Executive management is considering a technical purge, starting with the head of aerodynamics and the head of CFD simulation who approved the current design. These kinds of moves are not new at Ferrari, but every time they happen, the price is usually paid with years of transition. Third, the pilot market. Formula One, globally, is in premature turmoil in the transfer market. Red Bull has already experienced its own crisis, demoting Liam Lawson and repatriating Yuki Tsunoda in a desperate attempt to salvage a season that has, so far, been disappointing. Mercedes, for its part, continues to evaluate Kimi Antonelli as a promise for the future, but does not rule out reinforcements if the situation at Ferrari explodes. In this context, the name of Charles Leclerc has already been unofficially linked to Aston Martin, where Fernando Alonso has not yet defined his continuity beyond 2025. When a team like Ferrari, with more than 70 years of history in Formula One, enters into crisis, not only its performance on the track is at stake. Your identity is at stake. What happened at Singapore 2025 was not a bad race. It was a powerful statement that something in the fabric of Maranello has broken. And the most alarming thing is that this fracture did not originate overnight. It is the result of years of questionable decisions, a culture that has prioritized image over performance, and a management that has constantly oscillated between tradition and modernization without establishing a clear direction. Hamilton and Leclerc are not just any two drivers. They are possibly the most valuable talents Ferrari has had since the Schumacher era. The first arrived loaded with experience and titles, ready to give his last battle for glory in red. The second has grown up within Ferrari. He was formed with the Cavallino flag on his shoulders and has waited patiently for the moment when the team offered him a car at his level. If both are questioning their continuity in this project, it is not on a whim. It is because from within they know that something is not working and that something could become irreversible if action is not taken immediately. Do you think Hamilton should stay at Ferrari and fight to change things from within? Or do you consider that his time at Maranello has been a mistake from the beginning? Is Leclerc doomed to repeat the cycle of frustrations experienced by drivers like Alonso or Vettel before him? Can Ferrari really reinvent itself, or are we seeing the beginning of another era of decline? What did you think of the video? Leave me your opinion in the comments.